Well, we are live. It is Thanksgiving morning, triple play fantasy DFS Chalk Talk edition. We got 3 games that we're going to get right at you in a moment. Welcome in, triple play fantasy, Thursday morning, Thanksgiving DFS edition. Jeff's already hungover from the night before Thanksgiving, obviously. You ready, buddy?
Real quick, man. I had a little hiccup on my end, but we're good to go. As usual, it's time to get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans, baby. Thanksgiving edition. And for those who know, right behind me, I got the orange and brown for our Agawam Brownies. Don't make fun of the name of the team from the high school that we grew up in. So this is DFS Chalk Talk, brought to you by Triple Play Fantasy. As usual, I got my boys Joe and Mike. Mike looks like he's just sitting outside having a good time, man. Happy Thanksgiving, man. What's going on?
Not much, man. Back down in Tampa to grab the rest of the family. Heading back up here north, starting tomorrow. So very excited, man. It's good to be here. I'm glad to be able to join us for this Thanksgiving Day show, man. I love Thanksgiving football. And it's crazy that there's a game tomorrow, Friday at 3. That blew me away.
It is going to be interesting seeing the Black Friday game. And as always, Joseph, what is happening, my friend?
Hey, this is, I'll tell you, prior to having little shit kids, this is by far the best day of the year. I will be jealous of anybody who can just sit there with turkey in their belly and their hand down their pants all afternoon. I'll be chasing around a 1 and a 3-year-old. But that being said, love that it's 3 games. Love that the Cowboys and the Lions both relevant. I love the NFL for adding that night game a few years ago. This year we got a good one, San Francisco and Seattle. This is, it doesn't get better than Thanksgiving Day NFL football.
No doubt. Our usual show, which will still be on Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern when we do all things DFS. Typically we hit the main slate. But today we wanted to come special this morning and give you our Thanksgiving lineups, considering there are 3 games. And there should be some interesting games, although they have some of the biggest spreads out of anything for this week. You got Green Bay at Detroit, you got Washington at Dallas, and then San Francisco at Seattle. Not necessarily on paper the best games. Might be blowouts here and there, but we'll see what we got. So we'll give, typically on the show, we'll do a couple bargain plays, and then we do a pay up. This week, we're just going to, or at least for this particular show, we're going to give our whole lineups and kind of run through why we got these guys in, give a little bit numbers, who's maybe a bit of a bargain today, and how you can fit them into your lineup. So, Joe, I'll go ahead and have you just kind of lead off who you got lineup-wise this week.
Yeah, and I'll start with some quick injury stuff just so we're all
I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
End of the day. Quarterback, the only thing up in the air. Geno Smith is technically questionable. Does sound like he's going to play. Doesn't sound like he's 100%. Seattle is pretty banged up in general tonight, unfortunately, because this is a great matchup with them in San Francisco leading that NFC West. But Kenneth Walker is doubtful. The assumption is he will not play. So they will be turning to the youngster there, and now I'm forgetting his name.
Zach Charbonnet.
Yes, Zach Charbonnet. Obviously cheap DFS play. We'll get into that later. That's about it. Another thing, Aaron Jones also out for Green Bay. So, it's potentially an AJ Dillon week. We all know how that roller coaster goes. Antonio Gibson for Washington was out last week. He's looking to be a game time decision there, running back. From a wide receiver perspective, we're pretty healthy. All the Seattle receivers who are banged up are all going to play. All the Green Bay guys are healthy. So we're pretty much healthy at the wide receiver position this week. Tight end, we are a little banged up at tight end this week as Luke Musgrave is out for Green Bay. So that will welcome in the Tucker Kraft era at tight end for Green Bay. Other than that, everybody else is pretty healthy. So that is the injury lay of the land for the Gobble Day slate here.
Perfect. And I'm not going to make fun of any more backup tight ends. Last time I did that, Trey McBride ended up being a stud, and he's still probably going to be fantastic this coming Sunday. But so lineup-wise, it's interesting just with 3 games and kind of difficult to fit the guys in who you want. And you got to kind of give a little bit here and there. So lineup-wise, Joe, who are you going with today as far as kind of top to bottom? We can kind of go through what's what.
Yeah, so on DraftKings, quarterback, for me, it was, am I going Dax or am I going Purdy out of this group? You can get some points from Howell on a given day, but there are just so many turnovers there at this point. So I'm going Dak Prescott in this lineup. He's 6,800 on DraftKings. Last week, he only had 16 against Carolina because they won 33-10. Prior to that, 41, 31, and 32. As we know, he's on fire with CeeDee Lamb. Again, definitely consider Purdy. Goff scares me a little bit after his week last week against Chicago, so I kind of paused on him. Running backs, Christian McCaffrey had his touchdown streak broken last week, so I love him getting back in the end zone, so I'm going to pay up for him at 8,700. I'm also going to pay for Jahmyr Gibbs at 6,800 on DraftKings. Montgomery and Gibbs, they proved it last week that they can both be very successful on a given game. Home against Green Bay should be a good matchup. Although, again, I don't know. I'm not sure what direction Detroit's going in right now. They have not looked great recently. So curious to see if they use this as a get-right game or not. Green Bay's a little bit motivated coming off of the big win against the Chargers last week. Also, so then we go to wide out, and we'll start with, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to do the same thing I did last week. He's a little bit cheaper than CeeDee Lamb in the slate. He's 8,500 to CeeDee Lamb's 8,700. So I'm going to go Brown again for Detroit. The guy is it's insane. I mean, he had 21 last week, and that was kind of a slow week for him. Also going to pay for, a cheap play here. Jaden Reed for the Packers, 4,200. He's at 19 DraftKings points 2 weeks in a row. They're giving him the ball in the rushing game as well as the passing game. And Jamison Williams, 3,400 for Detroit. He finally got in the end zone last week, and he's starting to get a few more targets. And really, after Brown, it's really up for grabs as far as who's the second best wide out there. So going to play the injury game at tight end. Tucker Kraft for Green Bay making his starting debut, taking over for Musgrave, who's hurt. He did have a couple catches last week after he came in. Jordan Love looked a little better last week. We talked about going Charbonnet?
Indeed.
Zach Charbonnet at running back for Seattle, 5,300. It's not a great matchup. We get real excited about some of these backup running back starts sometimes. A lot of times they're a dud. I don't love Charbonnet, but for 5,300 and the fact that they can get him active in the passing game, he had 6 receptions on 6 targets last week. I expect a little bit more of that because I don't think they'll be able to run much on San Fran. And then going to take that Cowboy defense home against Washington. Even if Washington scores some points, they're going to turn them over quite a bit. And I expect a big day there.
I don't have too many arguments with that. Obviously, like I said, we all have to fit in the guys we really want to fit in and go cheap when we can. And I believe they call Zach Charbonnet the French Connection there in Seattle. So I believe that's his new nickname. But in any case, I'll slide down to Mike. We got full lineup and, any odds and ends or any bargains that make sense for some people.
First off, I'd like to apologize for the equipment, the location, and stuff like that. I'm just kind of in between studios at the moment, but we'll get back to normal. As far as it goes, the first thing I do got to say is I do kind of argue with the Zach Charbonnet. I think this is a game where you're going to see, especially with a banged-up Geno Smith going in there, banged-up DK Metcalf going in there, you're going to see them have to rely on those legs a little bit. And those legs kind of are a little bit fresh when you consider Kenneth Walker and his utilization this year. Zach Charbonnet's came in, spelled him pretty well. And, in those things, he's looked pretty good. So I think he'll actually be a good volume play. That said, he's not in my lineup today because I was able to fit in a few other guys that I'm a little bit more excited about. Brock Purdy, I started out with Brock Purdy because I was kind of with you, Joe. Was it going to be Dak or was it going to be Purdy? I went with the cheaper play. I think that San Francisco-Seattle game, I think, is going to have room for a few touchdowns. I think a lot of that's going to be done in the air by Purdy. I got him in there. I like the running back game. in the Detroit Green Bay game. I do like Dylan, but I also like David Montgomery, who I'm paying $7,800 for. A little bit of a pay up there as well, but I don't mind paying up for the 2 running backs because I also have Tony Pollard at Dallas. They're facing Washington. I really like that matchup for Tony Pollard. He actually looked really, really good last week for the first time in a long time. Talking about banged up receivers in Seattle, I like the San Francisco at Seattle matchup a lot to score a lot of points. So I got Jackson Smith and Jigba coming in at 5,400 for my cheapest play of the week. I think him coming in at 5,400 was kind of insane considering the situation with Lockett and Metcalf coming into it. Brandon Cooks, Dallas, he let me down last week. I think I'm going to try to double dip that well. I think this is a lot better matchup at home against Washington at 5,700. I couldn't let that one go. Deebo Samuel, 6,700. It makes me wonder if these guys know what the hell they're doing in the FanDuel land, because that is way too cheap for everything Deebo Samuel brings to the table. Jake Ferguson at 6,100. I like the tight end usage out of him the most out of most of these tight ends outside of Kittle, who I just couldn't quite reach for because I wanted to get Amon-Ra St. Brown at home against Green Bay. Like I said, I think that's going to be an electric game happening. I love these 2 matchups right here. I love the Detroit one. I love the Dallas one. I think those are going to be the games. And then for my defense, I got the 49ers at 4,500. Just again, I think they're going to have to rely on that running game. I think San Francisco is going to be able to shut down this banged up Seattle pretty easily. So that's my line.
Yeah. No, I could appreciate that. I got a few variations. We agree in some spots and not necessarily some others. But Joe mentioned this a little bit earlier. It really kind of comes down to, and I'll start with my lineup. I got Dak at home versus Washington. He's 8,500 on FanDuel. He's 800 more than Purdy. I think it really does come down to Dak or Purdy or Goff. You could maybe make a case for Goff, but it's really Dak or Brock Purdy. And then when I looked at it, I know I'm paying up a little bit more for Dak, but he's at home. He's a different player at home, seemingly. Brock Purdy's in Seattle, a little bit more hostile in Seattle. Don't get me wrong. I still think he's going to get his points, but it was worth the stretch for me to go with Dak in that aspect. Another one that I had to get right away is at running back. I got Jahmyr Gibbs at home versus Green Bay, 8,200. So here, Gibbs, the last 4 games, FanDuel points, he has 93.7 FanDuel points. The last 4 games for Christian McCaffrey were 83.9. So you're looking at a 10-point difference from a guy. And I really wanted to fit McCaffrey in. I've got Deebo Samuel too, but I think the 49ers offense is a machine. And McCaffrey, I agree with Joe. He's probably going to get in the end zone, but Jahmyr Gibbs is just outpointing this guy in at home versus Green Bay. I couldn't get away from that matchup for the bargain that he was compared to, Christian McCaffrey. So that difference-wise, you're looking at 1,600 on FanDuel. That's a big difference. And for a guy who scored more than McCaffrey over the last 4 games, it's worth the stretch for me. Or at least
I've got nothing bad to say about Gibbs, and it's a great stat. The only thing you got to preface that with is the first 2 games of that for Gibbs played without Montgomery, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that was without Montgomery, but even still, he's gotten his points. So I still think it's going to be a good matchup. By the way, it is eggnog season. So cheers, boys.
What a great move by Detroit. One more thing. It's amazing. Like, they had Swift, and I thought it was kind of crazy that they traded him. And it felt like it was like the writing was on the wall there. But like, they get Gibbs. It was really a great, for all the bad years Detroit had, they're hot, whether it's decisions on the field, but it's a great move to let go of Swift, get some value there, and then just bring Gibbs in, who's actually looks like he's going to be better than Swift.
Yeah, seemingly. And you had the Montgomery takeover, who looked really good at the start of the season. Now Gibbs has kind of come on since he got injured and capitalized on that injury for lack of a better.
This is why Goff scares me now too, because like Montgomery's almost a given to get in the end zone each week because he's a short yardage guy. Gibbs is breaking enough runs where he's getting in the end zone from wherever. It's really, Amon-Ra is going to get his yards, but other than that, you don't necessarily need a ton more from that passing game with those 2 running backs now.
Yeah, exactly. So, and at my other running back, I'll actually agree with Mike as far as Zach Charbonnet. He's going to get a little bit more work in the passing game. Yeah, San Francisco's very tough against the run, but Seattle's going to have to do something on offense. I think some swing passes out of the backfield, even if he gets half a dozen like he did last week, then that puts you at least on the board from a bargain standpoint at 5,800. So wide receiver, the guy I wanted both CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra. The problem is CeeDee Lamb's 9,200 and Amon-Ra is 8,500. So the $700 discount, which 800 I paid up more for Dak, Amon-Ra, I kind of got that bargain between the two. And over the last 5 games, Amon-Ra St. Brown has 63 targets, 47 receptions, and 3 of the 5 games he has touchdowns. The guy is a machine. Not that CeeDee Lamb is not, but he's getting all the targets seemingly there. And I think he'll kind of feast, pun intended, I suppose, there today versus the Packers. So, and because of that, I had to squeeze in Brandon Cooks, not necessarily my favorite play. He had a big week a couple weeks ago. Bit of a letdown there home. If he can get 50 yards and get in the end zone once, I think it's worth the bargain there at 5,700 at home versus Washington. And then Mike's right. He made a great point about Deebo Samuel. It's almost criminal to have the guy at 6,700 at Seattle with the elements that he brings to the game, whether it's running the ball, receiving, or however it may be. Deebo is just so versatile that you can't keep him out of your lineup at 6,700 for FanDuel. So tight end, agree with Mike, and I forget if you had him too, Joe. Jake Ferguson, 6,100 at home versus Washington. Flex, I went with Terry McLaurin at Dallas, 6,900. Washington's going to have to get some yardage to somebody to try to keep up with Dallas. I think McLaurin might be that guy. And then defense, it came down to Dallas, San Francisco, or Detroit. I had to just go with the cheaper of the 3, Detroit at home versus Green Bay, there 4,000. So any disagreements, comments from you guys about that lineup?
No, I like it, man. I like it. I think a couple different angles that we have there, but that's why we make this show, is because whoever you're going to tail usually is going to make you at least in the 150 mark. So I think this is going to be good lineups for all of us today.
Right on. So as usual, like I said, our typical show, 9 p.m. Eastern time, Saturdays, DFS Chalk Talk. We talk about the main slate, all things DFS. We talk about our pay-ups, our bargains, everything else in between. We've had some good weeks in a row, so don't miss that Saturday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then also catch us on the Blitz, 11 a.m. Eastern time, Sunday mornings, where we answer your questions live and go through everything and just kind of give you a little insight as to what we're thinking if you're on the fence as to who you should start and who you shouldn't. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Any parting words here, gentlemen?
Turkey with sweet potato pie. Sammy Davis Jr. only had one eye.
Gobble, gobble, gee, and gobble, gobble, giggle. Irish turkey only cost a nickel.
There you go.
Okay. We are ending the show on such a corny note. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll catch you next time.